The Old School is brought to you by Ahart Solutions, which provides school surveys and applied research. More information at ahartsolutions.com.
Good morning, good evening, whatever it is. Welcome to the Old School Podcast, a podcast about the American education system and a host of other things, such as today. And with me in that endeavor is my good friend, Dr. Stephen Bourgeois. Good morning, sir.
Herr Miller, what's going on with you? We're really late in the weekend to be doing this, sort of squeezing it in before dinner time with the families.
Such is our dedication and commitment to our listeners.
Ooh,
We do have a dedication. Now, it doesn't always work as far as like weekly installments, but we do our best. So,
we do. Every once in a while, we do it.
yeah,
Um,
we fumbled the ball, but otherwise, we're good.
well, this is it feels like something's different now. I don't know what it is. It's something in the air, but I
Just
feel
because it's a different time of day, or
no. It's a quality of light, a little something in the air. I know it's still 100 degrees here. But there's this feeling of hope out there. Even when I took my walk this morning, there's just a little something of I'm not gonna say fall is in the air, but there's something out there.
the autumn wind is a pirate.
That's not what I was thinking, but
So before we get started, I had we could talk about that autumn wind, and I do think you're a bit delusional because it's 107, I think, today. But
great.
um, so I heard someone tell me that they had never eaten cold pizza before, and I must admit, surely there's a lot of people around the world that's never had cold pizza. You know, uh, your average folks, perhaps in rural China or Mongolia, never had cold
Mm.
pizza. But if you lived in the West, if you live in the United States, it seems implausible that at one time or another, and this was a guy, so you figure he went through the typical kind of bachelor existence through college or the early years or whatever the case may be, that at some point you would have eaten cold pizza before.
It's one
Do
of
you
the best
believe it?
parts. No, I don't. I mean, it's one of the best parts about pizza. You have pizza in your refrigerator for a couple of days, and if you want to reheat it, that's a wonderful thing. But if you just want to grab a piece and, particularly real early in the morning, a little piece of breakfast pizza cold, doesn't have to have pineapple on it or anything weird, just whatever the toppings. It changes it. You actually taste the flavors more when they're cold than when they're piping hot.
Do you think that there's any kind of pizza topping that doesn't work as well cold?
No,
Or do you think it's all good?
it's great. Tomato sauce, you wouldn't think you want to eat tomato sauce, but there's not a ton of tomato sauce on a
Yeah.
pizza. I mean, if it has a whole lot of sauce, then I would, be less likely maybe, but no, any cold pizza is the comparable food is, cold chicken, same thing, particularly chicken wings or whatever, but chicken's great cold with with
Yeah.
chicken skin, beautiful. I prefer fried chicken cold to hot, honestly.
Really?
Oh yeah, no, I'll eat it cold and put a little bit of ranch dressing on my plate with a little bit of extra hot sauce poured into that ranch and just go to town. I love it cold.
Is the cold chicken from the same era of your halcyon days of younger Steve Bourgeois as the chicken? They both come from the same time period? Do you still do it?
Yeah, still do it today for sure. But yeah, I always loved having chicken wings that are cold, drumsticks. It didn't, yeah, it's like a different food group than when you had it hot. And somehow you get real hungry for it. Hmm. Just because it changes, so you don't get tired. Oh, I'm having chicken again. No, you're having cold chicken. But I love cold chicken and cold pizza. They're two of the great things in this world.
I will admit, I am used to being impugned for my taste, my culinary taste. Be it a nice glass of buttermilk, a nice handful of multi-flavored jelly beans all in one go in the mouth, things of that nature, mincemeat pie. I thought that this was not controversial. I thought me saying that I had cold pizza in the morning was a fairly widely held belief, but apparently not.
Well, you you ran into one person who do what you do. I mean, it's not like it was sitting out on the counter all night. You know, that's
Right.
the safety issue if there's meat on it, but right out of the
Well,
refrigerator, you know?
in my days,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have mattered if it had been laying out all night.
There was a time when we broke a lot of rules here, Miller. You would collect, well, some of us would collect bottles and leave them on the counter to show how successful your weekend was of drinking, and then you always had a couple boxes of pizza there. Um, I will say that during my single days, I had a microwave, but I didn't use it to cook food. That's where I put my receipts. Replace it with listen and stuff.
Jeez. Man, you had a microwave in your younger days? You
I
must have
did.
had money.
I did, but I didn't use it for that purpose. I just put my receipts in there and um, made sense at the time. A lot of things made sense at that time.
Hmm. Well, as you did mention, we are, at least on the calendar, we are turning a page here fairly soon. I don't know exactly when summer is officially over. I know that we're getting close to it as far as the calendar date. But because of what we're going back into, or what we're about to enter, the phase of the calendar we're about to enter, it reminded me we have talked at length about baseball, and rightly so. It's America's pastime, for God's sakes. We have talked about soccer because we have recorded this podcast while I have been in Germany or been in England, going to soccer games or what have you. Only in terms of the crime committed against the city of Baltimore in 1984 have we really ever talked about football. And
I think people will disagree because we sometimes will end our show talking about college football and what game we're about to watch because we
yeah, but it's just more of a passing kind of a
oh,
breezy
but it's
overview of something.
you're talking about getting into the topic of football.
Getting into the topic of football.
Yeah, we've never really given it the time it deserves.
So I will say that football has over the years kind of dropped
What?
in my rankings of sports a little bit. Not like a great deal, but some. But I must admit, I find myself pretty excited for the season. You and I are going to a couple of football games, and not games of lesser importance, but rather, we're going to be down in Death Valley at Baton Rouge one weekend, and then we're going to be in Baltimore when the Colts, good God, when the Ravens play the Steelers in Week 18
Oh,
of the NFL season. So we've got football on the docket, and maybe that's why I am excited.
after your Freudian slip. Colts aren't in Baltimore anymore, Ross. Just
Yes, I know. I know. By the way, saw a Mayflower truck this weekend on North Tarrant.
they have them here. Those are the
I
moving
guess. I
the
don't know where the hell
move
that thing came from.
the Colts. Did you flip it off like you always say you're going to?
Well, I didn't see it, except for the last minute. It kinda turned right onto the road, the opposite side of the road as I was going past it, and so
They usually
I didn't see it until the last minute, but
well,
unbelievably, those things are there, here.
they're known to appear in the dead of night.
Not unlike a thief in the night.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
st the thief of dreams and hopes and aspirations.
So it took us about 30 seconds to get to your childhood trauma again. A little longer
That's
than
because you
Is that what this? Are we gonna relive that again?
No, no, this every time we end up talking about this, it's usually you who egg it on.
No, you brought up the Colts, but yes, we're gonna attend a couple of games, important games. The very last game of the season, possibly
Yeah.
for the Steelers and the
Last
Ravens,
game for Aaron Rodgers.
unless he's in the playoffs. I think he's going to have a playoff in front of him.
I don't think so. I don't care what Alex says, our good friend Alex Fingers. I don't care what he says. The Steelers are going to the playoffs this year.
Oh,
But I'm kind of curious as to, would you say that football was really the first sport that you gravitated towards when you were a kid? And what was the gateway drug into that love affair with you and football?
well, it was probably when I was 4 years old, and the drug was called beer, if I recall. So yeah, I would watch. This was in the early 1960s, mid 60s. When the Packers were the Packers, great, with Vince Lombardi, that era. My father would watch the games on the weekend, on Sundays at home, and remember he would have a can of beer, and that would be a good way to keep the kid quiet. But I don't think I was like drinking a whole can, but I would always have a sip of beer, maybe a couple sips. And so to this day, when I'm watching a football game, I have a hankering for beer. But yeah, I came by it honestly from early on. So I was a Packer fan and was watching football games. Not sure how much I understood, but and then when we
And
moved
where were you living in Wisconsin or Michigan at this time, or?
here in Michigan, in
Yeah.
northern Michigan, and we moved to Oregon when I was 5, and then about the next time I really remember watching football was I would say when the Chiefs played the Vikings in a Super Bowl. So that was what, 1970, something like that.
Yeah, a little bit after that. But so even in Oregon, you stayed a Packers fan, even though you lived in a time where it was not easy to get the games of the teams that you wanted, not like it is today.
Yeah, and that, by the way, that was 1970, January
97. Okay.
1970. Yeah, the Chiefs beat the Vikings 23-7. Um,
Okay.
so in Tulane Stadium, interesting enough.
In New Orleans. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so I stayed with the Packers and still am. It's kind of come and gone as far as knowing players are really being deeply involved. So I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm a fan, but I'm a real fan of the Packers. But they've been kind of up and down, and they're not on TV unless they're really good, and then I'll get to watch games. So you just never know.
Didn't you have a dalliance once with the Rams as a fan?
Well, I was like the Rams. Yeah,
Is it because that was the game that was always on TV on the West Coast, or?
yeah, and a lot of my friends were Ram fans, and I was like them. I was one of them to do well. Everybody loved the 49ers when Joe Montana was there, and enjoyed that.
Mhm.
But yeah, those were great eras, and yeah, I knew all the players. I mean, that's when I was collecting football cards, and so learning how to play football, and and it's the only connection that's tangible, to a person's youth, I think, is
Right.
these teams for the most part, well, a lot of them are the same, and,
Not all of them, but some.
everybody who has their childhood team take a step forward, uh, some of them are, and even indirectly, I mean, your indirect path is a little bit shady as far as claiming a team that doesn't exist anymore to be in a city.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. You talk about the Browns and these teams that aren't really from there originally, but you lose track of the history a little bit.
I don't lose track of the history. I know where they're from.
Well, you do. You deny it, you know.
I'll deny it.
Well, so what about the Ravens? What team are they technically?
They're the Baltimore Ravens.
No, no, they're the Cleveland
They were
Browns.
an expansion team, I think.
No, they weren't. They're the Cleveland Browns. Everybody, all
The
their
Browns, the Browns, as far as records, as far as names, as far as colors, as far as heroes, that never left the city of Cleveland. Not like the city of Baltimore.
that's
Cleveland kept its identity, its team, its colors, its heroes, its records, its standings, and its entire history we became a new team. We are different. We are not the Cleveland Browns. We are
So
not
you're
the
just
former Cleveland Browns.
you're making things up because that first
No, I'm not making things up. Cleveland has their own team.
look at the
The same
roster.
same name.
Look at the roster of the Ravens from their first year. They all just accidentally came from Cleveland. Every player, every coach, they're all, they spent the previous several years in Cleveland. That was not just an accident. They moved.
Come on, we're not going to rehash this because everyone's already heard your flimsy arguments here. So,
Argument. You're in now. But why are we even?
what was the first football game you went to?
Um, I went to see the Oregon Ducks play against Army. That was with Dan Fouts as quarterback. It was probably around 1972, something like
And does your fandom do they come in this in the same magnitude and level of passion between the Packers and the Ducks? Or, did that fluctuate as you spent more years away from Michigan and the Green Bay area than you were there?
Well, the Packers weren't that good when I was a kid. After those first 2 Super Bowls, they weren't there for quite a while.
You're
But
saying Lynn Dickey wasn't good?
he was fine. He was serviceable. I always bring up Lynn Dickey. I don't know why,
I
but
had this football card.
okay. Trying to up the value of that car, but no, I think the Ducks were consistent. I consistently went to their games, sat in the end zone, and so that was my viewing. I hadn't been to a pro game until I moved to Texas and saw the Cowboys.
Really?
Yeah, the time that Tony Romo took over the team at halftime from Drew Bledsoe, that was against the Giants, the hated Giants. I went to that game. Uh,
That's right. We were both at that game before we knew each other.
that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we were both seeing and Tony Romo came in after an injury at the very end of the first half, and then he finished the second half. I think the Giants won, but Romo was good, and the
Hmm.
rest is history. And now he's making the news for all kinds of other things.
No. But as far as like college football as opposed to pro football, I would think your allegiance lies more to the college game just because you have a more personal
Oh, for sure.
experience with it.
Yeah, and it was kind of long suffering. I mean, there were some good teams, but not the team Oregon became after I left in 1994. That's when they were in the Rose Bowl. They lost to Penn State, and since then they've been good or great every year, and so they
That's
really
when
haven't
that's when
had any rebuilding years since then.
that's when Phil Knight started spending money
Yeah,
and
you bet. So the whole culture changed, and they're going to go into this season ranked number one. They have a tough schedule, and we'll see. But I'm going to try to watch their games. I've
mhm.
mentioned how I used to take an hour off after they did one dumb thing, one turnover. I'll be out of there, for an hour, taking a little bit of a break. But
Yeah.
no, I'm gonna sit through it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, for me, it was always the pro game. Maryland had. Do you gotta go?
keep going. I'm just checking out there.
Okay, but Maryland did not have it. I mean, there was the University of Maryland, but that was damn near DC. And so, if you lived in the city of Baltimore,
Hmm.
then University of Maryland might as well have been on Mars. I mean, I had no more connection with the Terrapins than I did with you know.
Why? So who did
uh,
you root for?
I rooted for the Colts.
But what about college football?
There was no college. I mean,
They were on
you know,
television.
what well, yeah, they were on television, but it's like but there was no local team that I automatically gravitated towards. And as I got older, and as I became a teenager,
Mhm.
I guess I started paying attention to the Terrapins, as well as paying attention to the Nittany Lions because they were fairly close to us, but for the most part, it was mostly a pro city. And the college aspect of things just wasn't that big, at least not with football. Now, if you talk about lacrosse, then you had Towson, you had Johns Hopkins, there's a bunch of schools in our area
Yeah.
that had huge college programs. But as far as like football or baseball or what have you, it wasn't on anyone's radar. At least not in my hometown, it wasn't.
Okay. Well, I think you should have rooted for Maryland and you know, planted your flag. They have a really great flag, by the way, in Maryland.
They do, they do. The problem is that they are too promiscuous in its usage. They got that thing splattered over the helmet. They've got it all over the uniform. It's too much, and the beauty of those colors is on a rectangular banner, not on a bleeding football helmet. And so, but no, I did kind of after a while started getting into Terrapins football or Nittany Lions football, that sort of thing. Um, but yeah, no, it was mostly the Colts until that fateful day.
Yeah. Remember that day. Well, a lot of us are enamored by teams because of their helmets. I mean, even
Oh yeah.
I always like the Rams, like their uniforms,
Hmm.
love their helmet. I always thought that the Cardinals were kind of cool. With that little cardinal there. You like the more classic ones, but for college football, and I'm from Michigan. I love the Michigan helmet. That was a
Right.
great helmet, and they have a great fight song too. So so I rooted for Michigan a bit, but I didn't. Um, that was when the Big Ten had 10 schools, not 40 or whatever they have now, and the Oregon Ducks played in the Pac-8. That's what it was called, and they were schools from the West Coast, in in those states, and then it expanded, and that's when things got confusing, but everything was local, and I think that's there was something great about that.
For me, the first tingling of the new football season usually coincided with the selling of the Street and Smiths football edition for the upcoming season. That's where they would lay out every team, what their players were, all this other stuff, look at the schedule, what have you. And me and my friends, we used to read Street and Smiths like it was the Bible. I mean, it had like a reverential quality to it. No one was to mess up the magazine. Everyone would have a chance to read it, that sort of thing.
Hmm,
And you just sit there and you would just go through it, and that kind of ingrained the kind of pro aspect. Now, when the Colts left, then the question was, who was I going to root for next? Now, I was at a very early age, much too young of an age to be making these kind of life altering decisions.
for like
But
10
as
or something?
no, I was 14, 13, 14. But I was still too young for this sort of a thing, as George Will talked about when he picked the Cubs as his team. But for me, there's no way in God's green earth I could have rooted for any of the neighboring teams. The Eagles. The Eagles. It's a bunch of hooligans, sociopaths
What?
that are fans of that
Can't
team.
say that.
And there's no way I was going to be a fan of the Redskins because the Redskins were, I mean, we weren't division rivals, but because we were so close, the Colts and the Redskins always
Yeah,
had a kind of a
you should have loved the Redskins.
no, huh?
Um, well, they were a great team, and they stayed great for a long time during your formative years.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like, no, no Colts fan was going to become a Redskin fan. That just wasn't going to happen. Steelers, there's no way in hell that was happening. I mean, that was that would have been one of the dumber pieces of advice someone would have had for me as I was picking a
They,
team. And so what I ended up doing,
they were a dynasty.
because, huh?
Steelers were maybe the one dynasty besides the Patriots.
That had nothing to do with anything as far as my choice of a new team.
Okay, so you chose a team that was an expansion team.
Yes, and I chose the team because I thought they had cool uniforms. Again, remember the age I was, and I thought they had a cool helmet, and I kind of liked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is towards the end of John. Um, oh
Rob,
heck,
was it?
oh shoot, what is his name? The
Uh,
first head coach he was at USC.
yeah,
He was John McKay. John McKay?
yeah.
Yeah, John McKay. And he said that when his team made the playoffs in his fifth year, they said, "You predicted this. I mean, how did you know? Did you see something there in 1977 that told you this team could do it?" And he goes, "No, that was just how long my contract was, and so that's how long I said that was we were going to take to get to the playoffs."
They lost all their games their first year.
Oh yeah, well, the first year and a half they lost all their games.
So was he there when they won the Super Bowl?
No,
Okay.
no, John McKay. So the best they did under John McKay was that they made it to the uh it wasn't the NFC it wasn't the NFC championship game. It was the game before that when they played the Eagles and lost 9-0.
Okay.
And when they wouldn't make it back, at least not to that level until after well, it was when John Gruden, that first year John Gruden was the coach of the Buccaneers.
That was
But
long.
I was always fascinated by the team. And then when Baltimore received its expansion team, I said, okay, I'm gonna root for the Ravens
Not an
because it's my
expansion.
hometown.
It's not an
It was
expansion team.
it
No.
is an expansion
Expansion
team, and you
team is
know
a
it is.
new team. It's a new team where they pillaged from different teams in an expansion draft. Were those players drafted in that first
Some
year?
were,
No, they weren't.
some were. They had to do the draft just like everyone else does.
They picked up their facility and all their players and all their HR department, everybody who worked there, and moved them into Baltimore. You call it an expansion team. It's not an expansion.
It's an expansion team, so that's
So
why we're quite proud of how
lies.
quickly we made it to the Super Bowl.
So easy. You're just so flippant with the truth.
No, and it helps us with the moral quagmire of taking another
Okay.
city's team, and when we lost our team. But like I said, at least they got to keep their history, their records, their colors, their player, whatever the case may
So
be.
then you started rooting for the Cleveland Browns, who happen to live in your city.
The Baltimore Ravens is the name, and so yes,
So did that take a while? Did you embrace them immediately, or were you a little bit aloof?
no, I was excited. They had a team before that for the CFL, and they were called the CFL Baltimore Colts. And then there was some trademark issues, or something happened, and then the team went away. And then I think the CFL tried to expand into the United States, and it never worked, and so they just retracted back into Canada. But no, I was interested. Their first coach, they're kind of their caretaker coach until they can get their footing, was Ted Marchibroda. He was the former Colts coach.
He coached with the Browns, didn't
Well, he coached with the Baltimore Colts.
he?
The team that before they left, he was their head coach, and so it was kind of cool seeing Ted Marchibroda back. Although by this time he was pretty old, and
Yeah, he
but
established them. Because the original Cleveland Browns franchise relocated to Baltimore and were renamed the Ravens. Um, I'm just reading the news, Ross. Yeah, I knew that name sounded familiar. He happened to come from Cleveland.
so what? But what? Yeah, 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 yeah. You're not going to win this argument because we lost everything about the identity of the Colts, and the Cleveland Browns gained and kept everything.
Well, they
And so
actually
you
have
cannot you,
another
you cannot
franchise.
equate the pain and suffering of Baltimoreans
So complete
with
the picture.
the rather the capricious and brief misery of the Cleveland Browns fans.
So the Cleveland Browns are now a franchise, unrelated to the previous Cleveland Browns. Was that a
Yet,
who are they? Did they get another team moved to them?
yeah, that was part of the whole deal. The whole deal was that when the Cleveland Browns left, that they would be guaranteed to keep all the history, the records, the colors in the franchise. When they get a team, that franchise would be known as the Cleveland Browns.
But
And so
was that a new franchise, or was it a move, somebody who moved in the middle of the night to Cleveland from
I
another?
think it was a new franchise.
Okay, so that was a
I think.
okay.
I know there's a couple of expansion teams right about that time. That was when the Jaguars came in. That's when um oh hell, who else was there? The Panthers, I think that was around that same time when they came into the league. And so anyway, so that I mean that being a football fan, it seemed like even though we didn't have the internet, we didn't have 24-hour coverage. There's a lot of things that could stoke your fandom. You had Street and Smiths, you had other magazines that were dedicated to the NFL. You had NFL films. Did you watch NFL
Oh, I loved
films?
it. Yeah, yeah.
John Facenda, the autumn wind was a pirate. That's kind of like the
That was
famous
beautiful.
line of his, but it was a very poetic, very romanticized notion of the NFL. But as a kid, you just ate that stuff up.
It's beautiful. Um, but yeah, that all of that and watching Monday Night Football with Howard Cosell doing the halftime and all, those were the glory days of the NFL. And so what changed?
Dandy Don Meredith.
Yeah, but something changed, and I'm not saying I've been soured by as I've gotten older, but in keeping with our show, we are grumpy, and all
True.
these moves, is on a serious level, is has hurt the league. There's not this connection to the past. Tearing down these historic stadiums. What are they moving Soldier Field in Chicago to Indiana?
Hammond, Indiana.
Yeah, none of this is right. And all these historic stadiums, who's left? I mean, the Lambeau Field has had it moved once, but I mean, the
Yeah.
has a facelift. Looks really good. I think they're going to hold on. But who else?
That is interesting about what are the oldest stadiums beyond Lambeau? I mean, maybe the Meadowlands.
But that's a new stadium. That's a brand new stadium.
Is it a brand new stadium?
Yeah,
I thought they played in the same place. Them and the Jets, the Giants and the Jets played
yeah.
there.
They play in New Jersey, but it's a brand spanking new
It's a
stadium.
brand spanking okay.
Yeah,
And Richfield is gone. Now they got a new stadium in Buffalo. They're debuting this year.
I know. The
Um,
field is the oldest.
Say again.
The cow or the Bears place is the oldest,
Right, but that's okay. That's going to be gone presumably within about 5 years.
and then the Chiefs are leaving, right?
Chiefs are leaving, so Arrowhead's gone in a couple of years.
Couple years.
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah. And so with all these changes happening in the NFL, does that make you more of a college football fan, or because of all the things happening in college football, have you started kind of distancing from that too?
Problem is, if you take away the Oregon Ducks and probably one player for Ohio State, I can't, and maybe one player for University of Texas, I can't name any college players.
Right.
So I don't know the players. I just know the history, and it's one of those sports that gets this incredible momentum as you get to the college playoffs. It's controversial, it's exciting, and then you get to watch these teams. I mean, the playoffs are beautiful because you get to know the teams, watch them a few
Hmm.
times, and then it's very exciting. Then they make one strategic error, is they wait too long for the final. They wait 2 weeks,
Right.
and everybody loses interest. You
The
know?
momentum is killed.
Yeah, and then everybody, because it was perfect. They had, like, the greatest thing happening, and then nobody wants to watch it or even cares. "Oh, did they play?"
Hmm.
And then it's
So is it enough to just root for the laundry? Just rooting for the uniforms? Or do you feel like you have to have a connection with the players on the team in order to make your fandom complete?
well, it helps if you went to college there,
Sure.
I mean, you're gonna root for Louisiana Monroe?
I have.
Yeah?
It's a very fine institution, by the way. I don't like the way
Well,
the tone in which you mentioned that school's
I
name.
tried to use the accent of, Monroe. That's a great place. No, they've had some pretty scary games where they've, almost had some major upsets, haven't they?
True. Yeah. They are the almost Appalachian State. where, where Appalachian State has done a lot of damage to the likes of Michigan and others. University of Louisiana at Monroe has almost had a bunch of sterling upsets against some pretty big teams, but
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not gonna downgrade them. I love anything about Louisiana, particularly the concept of going to a football game there. I mean, that
it's
that
gone.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be a scene. I remember seeing LSU when they played Oregon at Cowboy Stadium, and those fans were kind of loud, very intimidating. I think close and individually, they're very nice people. They seem to be on a little bit inebriated. Uh, and
You think?
but I remember, them chanting "Tiger bait," and that was pretty scary. If you're walking in a small group of Duck fans, and it was very loud. They were yelling at us. That gets your attention.
I remember I had a good friend of mine that played for TCU back in the late 60s, and he talked about one time going to Tiger Stadium
Yeah.
to play LSU. And what the Tigers used to do, they used to bring their mascot, the Bengal tiger, in a cage, and they used to park it right at the door to the visitors' locker room. So when they came out onto the field, the first thing they saw was this gigantic Bengal tiger in a cage, like barking and growling at it.
It's-
And he said he almost shit a brick the first time he came out to that field and saw that tiger. And I don't know. I sometimes wonder. I mean, a lot of people have been pontificating about this question, for the last couple years, or the last 10 years, and that is what is going to be the impact on college football when basically the football players just become like college employees, and
well,
they get paid money, and then
they can they take a pay cut to join the NFL. A lot of them.
yeah,
Um, Between that and the transfer portal, it's just a negotiation. That's what the whole off season is, and so you're going to get one conference. I mean, we're going to lose all these conference battles, historic. So they're taking the history out of it for TV ratings, and it's going to be great television, but you always give something up.
the
Um,
Faustian bargain, as you have been known to say.
well,
That's why I'm asking: is the uniforms enough when everything else is in flux? As a Ducks fan, will the uniforms be enough, as hideous as they are, to root for when everything else is topsy turvy?
yeah, the team is still the team from generation to generation, player to player, and if by chance they are able to get to a final, not this year or next year, but sometime in my life, I'll be happy and very excited. I'm not counting on anything. There are so many great teams, and the thing is, it's hard to bet on college football at the beginning because you always think you have an idea, and then by the time you get to January, Alabama suddenly is great again, you know, Texas is suddenly great again, and it happens every year, and so these programs that are hallowed, they're there for a reason. They're deep. They have players at every position and then backups and backs up. And by the time these great freshman recruiting classes get to January, they're practically ready for the NFL. And so the bigger programs tend to get better throughout the year. And so if Louisiana Monroe wants to get an upset, they might as well do it early on,
Right.
before Ohio State is Ohio State, because it's remarkable how at the end you think, well, how could anybody have even thought anything different? But they're so deep and so just athletic, and that's what you see in the SEC every weekend. They just beat each other up, and that's the only
Right.
hope that the rest of the league has, because every year they could be the top 20. You take them and the Big Ten, and those are going to be the best teams.
So we talk about this a lot with baseball, but how much of your love of football do you think comes from the fact that it was a shared moment that you had often with your father?
Um, Yeah, I can't really count how many games because we watched all of them,
Right.
and so all these, great seminal games and, in college football, sitting there on the couch, with my dad watching sports,
Mhm.
and it became even more fun when I was as a, someone in college and can have a beer or two and enjoy that, and then all the NFL games on the West Coast, that first game starts at 10 a.m. and then
Mm,
late game is at 1 p.m. And so the day has a little different structure than Texas, and
yeah.
um, but yeah, there are so many games, and I always say somebody's got to watch all of them. Um, but there are far too many games on television now, with Thursday night and sometimes Friday and sometimes Saturday. It used to be pretty specific. You'd get the two games, maybe your most local team and then the national game and then
And
Monday
you had
Night
Monday Night
Football.
Football,
Yeah, but
yeah,
not Sunday Night Football. It became later. So
and Thursday night, and
there's too many games. So it makes it difficult to watch them all. There was a perfection about finishing your day watching football and then watching 60 Minutes, and it's your dinner. Um,
usually an abbreviated or a pushed off 16 minutes after until the end of the game. But
but that was the East Coast. And the West Coast, they had a lot of time to get 60 minutes in. It started well after the game was over. Um, but yeah, there was a rhythm to it. It brought you through the fall. You know,
mhm.
I don't want to disparage baseball, but it's hard to compare a regular season game in football. There's a lot more meaning there than a regular season game in
Well, sure.
baseball. But then there's this wave where baseball comes, with the playoffs, and you get these night games with cool weather, and it's a
Mm,
beautiful thing. It seems like, well, the fans are more into it. There's this beautiful time when everything is happening, and then you even get the early basketball season. They're just kind of getting started, but you have all sports, hockey going at once for these magical few weeks.
mhm.
But but you consider this dormant period between February and today, basically. We're waiting for
Well,
football. I mean, yeah, there are other things we can watch, but this is why we get up in the weekend, and it's almost like there's a second job.
mm.
You watch football. You have a job to do on Saturday, job to do on Sunday, and by Monday morning, you've learned something. Um, I know the games are very similar, but there's stories develop. You have injuries, you have teams that are unexpected. It just creates this narrative very quickly, and I think, baseball has this slow grind to it. There's a beauty to it, a rhythm to it. Football, it becomes exciting very early, and then when you get to December, it becomes a whole different thing. Then the games even mean more. So there's less resting of players in football. You don't do that.
No
Every
load management, no load management in
no, no,
football.
no, they're playing to win every game because these divisions are tough to get out of.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you can't just kind of throw a game.
So as a way of kind of putting a bow to this and kind of going back a little bit to the nostalgia of football, who would you say, and you can go in any direction you want to, but who would you say were your favorite players as a kid, as you were starting to kind of love football and you were having these moments with your father and getting into the game, be it the Packers or the Ducks or what have you? Who were the guys that kept that inspiration going for you?
It's a hard question because, I would trade and look at football cards all the time. So I knew a lot of players.
Right.
But my active watching, kind of came a little bit later than the collecting, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Um, so by the time, a lot of these quarterbacks, were exciting, and I mean, and I really enjoyed watching Fran Tarkenton play,
Mhm.
completely exciting. Some of these, the Cowboys were fascinating. I didn't hate the Cowboys at all. I thought they were this beautiful team. Kind of, to me, there was a finesse and speed and untouchable. The Steelers the
Right.
same way. They were like watching gods playing. I mean, the players like Joe Green, defensive players. You know, the running backs. I mean, I got to see O.J. Simpson, break the record.
Mhm.
Watch that on TV when he was running on the snow. The single season rushing record. That was a big deal. I didn't have any idea what was gonna happen to him later, but at that moment, he had the world. Um, so, the Raiders were always fascinating, a little bit
Yeah.
edgy and a little, so I like Ken Stabler. So a lot of the, I guess you'd call them the skill players later on.
Mm,
Watching Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. So it tended to be more the offensive players, but there were some of these mythical defensive lines that that's when you knew these defensive lines, all the players you could name them. You could name the Steelers front four, the
right.
Rams front four.
It's interesting because a lot of the players that I thought were interesting also came from me collecting football cards, even though I had, you know, fandom of players in Baltimore. Burt Jones, the Baltimore Colts quarterback, was always kind of fascinating to me. He was kind of a flawed character, and he had ups and downs in his career, and his career wasn't that long. In the end, I think a lot of injuries caused problems, but always found him fascinating. He was before my time, but he was a larger than life figure in the city of Baltimore, and it was a guy by the name of Artie Donovan, who was the old defensive lineman for the old Colts back in the 50s and 60s. And he was this, like I said, he's this larger than life character. I had a chance to meet him once, not meet him personally. I saw him like at a gathering. We were in some sort of store somewhere in Baltimore, and he was there, and he was kind of holding court, and he was just like this Paul Bunyan-esque like character that seemed to be all powerful and just seemed to have, but at the same time, he also had this incredible wit. He had his personality, and so he wasn't like the stoic, tough guy, but he was a tough guy that also had kind of this kind of goofy personality that went on with it, and that disconnect I thought was very fascinating.
Oh,
Um, but you go to the football cards and guys like Conrad Dobler, the old offensive lineman for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was a guy who I got to meet when I was in the Marine Corps. Somehow, our captain knew Conrad Dobler, and he actually came and talked to our unit one time.
well,
And so, and yeah, it was incredible because I had his football card, and in the football card, he looked really really tough and really really mean. I just thought he was just badass, and I mean, who knows? Maybe he likes to knit, or I don't know what it. I didn't know him personally, but it just came across this kind of level of masculinity and toughness
yeah.
that I kind of got into, as most guys in my age. And yeah, Kenny Stabler. I mean, how do you not like a guy who professed that his preseason training consisted of cold pizza and beer? And so, so
Exactly. Yeah.
so, guys like that were people that were, and even as much as I despise the Steelers, guys like Mike Webster, the famous center for the Steelers during those years, was quite something. And then, all that stuff is kind of leads to where we are now. I'm excited for the season because we're going to see a couple games this year. But I do understand, I do kind of recognize that it has kind of dipped a bit for me. And
Well,
so,
well, there's one game that we've rarely talked about, and I know that you were 3 years old when it happened because I know when you were born, Ross, and uh,
okay.
and I was a little bit older at that time. I guess I would have been 9. But I did watch this game, and it's, again, one of the memories, watching it with my dad. And that's
Did I
when,
tell you the game?
yeah, tell me, what is it?
It's Jets Colts.
Well, they didn't play the Jets. No, no, no. That was earlier. That was the one with Joe Namath. That was earlier.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
talking
not talking about Colts Giants.
yeah, well, yeah, it's when the Colts beat the Cowboys, 1971.
Oh, okay, okay. All right.
And kicking that, the game was tied, and he kicked a field goal with no time left. And
Hmm.
off the field. And that was a game where the great Johnny Unitas started the game. He was older in his career, and he threw a long touchdown pass in the first half, had to go out with some type of a rib injury or something, and Earl Morrall comes in and
Hmm.
seals the game.
Saves the day.
Yeah, but I mean, that to me connects us because I watched that game, and I remember the Sports Illustrated cover after that, just showing this field goal with the Cowboys' hands up, and
Mm.
over that, I don't think he kicked straight. It wasn't a soccer style kick. It was this beautiful still of that moment captured forever, and I remember that. That's one of my more vivid early memories, and it was the Colts of all teams.
Well, growing up in Baltimore, of course, the games that most people talked about was the '58 NFL championship game against the New York Giants, the and then the Super Bowl III against the Jets
Right.
when Joe Namath, in what must be considered one of the biggest examples of chutzpah that any football player has ever exhibited, uh, called it. And of course, what else is he going to do? I mean, he's being told by everybody and their mother that he's going to lose the game. He's like, "We're going to win." And so I understand where the sentiment comes from, but it was one of those things where y- it would be the Colts that would be the first NFL team to lose to an AFL team, and that's basically what happened.
Yeah, that was I mean, the Colts have been around in a lot of history, of the
Yeah.
league, for
Hmm.
sure. But I guess that's the point, hearing us talk about all of these up until recently, we really haven't left, and we
Yeah.
we follow it, and, maybe people wonder why are you wasting all this time watching these games that seem relatively similar? Well, they are all different, but it does have this deep, deep connection to who we are.
We come from the people that helped
Mhm.
to mentor us. They were a part of that experience as well. My dad was right next to me in my first football game. He was right next to me on the couch, all the football games, watching on TV, listening to Kurt Gowdy or Keith Jackson on television, and so I think, yeah, I think all this, it's easy to dismiss sports as something that's not serious, but I would suggest it's the most serious, non-serious thing out there.
I like that.
And it's something that like you said, it connects us to our past, and how can you go wrong with that?
Yeah, and you and I have watched a lot of great games together. We've gone
Mhm.
pro games, but as far as sitting at your house or mine watching Super Bowls and college football playoffs and everything in
Yeah.
between, it's a beautiful thing, and then it also is tied in with food, the cooking that you've done at your home for me during football games, I'd like to have a list of all the meals you made, you know?
Well, the tradition will continue. I mean, and when we go to LSU, that
Ooh,
will be an all-day tailgating experience,
yeah.
and then 90,000 inebriated individuals will stumble into the stadium and watch the Tigers hopefully beat whoever they're going to play. So, all right, well, we both hold football near and dear to our hearts. It may not be everyone's jam, but it is a part of our lives. It's a part of us, and it was fun to talk about it. So, with that, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. And until the next time, I shall say adieu, Herr Doctor Bourgeois.
Wiedersehen, Herr Müller.